So you need to create a culture where, whatever the background of the workers may be, they feel sufficiently comfortable, safe is the word, to play, so to speak, to try.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure's mine.
Cedric, let's start by you introducing yourself and tell us a bit about your role and your responsibilities at the Singapore Human Resources Institute.
I'm an educator by training. For the last 10 years, I've been working with non-profits, helping the disadvantaged in Singapore and the region. And I recently joined the Singapore Human Resources Institute, SHRI, as the Deputy ED, Executive Director. My work basically is to support the ED in the operations and partnerships, essentially. So that's what I do.
What is your main focus at work at the moment?
I call it the 3 Ps, but the number one, the main focus is people, because really everything revolves around people. The second one is what I call process, but it involves structure as well, because as one of my former bosses used to say, structure determines behavior. I wouldn't go so far to agree with the word, determines, but it does influence behavior, structure, systems, processes, right? So that's important. But people come first. And then finally, when you get these right, you have progress. It's not just profit, right? There's much more than that. But of course, profit is a big part of it. So people may use P as profit, I call it progress. There's a difference there. Yeah, because the money, or the gains you get, should benefit society as a whole. And there are many, many other goals, in life beyond just profit. Yeah. So the 3 Ps, but people number one.
Intellect recently did a survey with 150 HR professionals in Singapore together with Milieu Insight. And we surveyed HR professionals on their own well-being and the well-being of their companies. And one finding from this study was that 24% of the respondents shared that staff in their companies are not comfortable to use the mental health benefits such as EAPs or any other well-being sort of initiatives. What is your experience working with SMEs? Is that something you have observed too?
Yes, to some extent. I'm not sure if it's an Asian Singaporean thing. It might be, but maybe some people from a different culture might be more open to, just using these things and maybe even taking a lead to encourage others to do so. But I've noticed that people generally don't want to be the first to do it, or the first few. Yeah, even if the boss says it's okay, because you don't know if it's okay, because you don't know until it's really okay. So to me, it's always about the boss or bosses, the leaders. They have to take the lead. You have to continually encourage people and not just say things, but do them. Again, it's like a parent-child relationship. You say, but you don't do. I don't believe you, right? At the end of the day, but you still must say. You follow up with do, or you do it both. So I think that's probably the challenge, but also the solution is there. The leaders in organization need to do that. You need to take the lead, really with them, do it with them, and so on. And I'm sure it will take time. And over time, people be convinced and say, yeah, let's do this.
We surveyed 150 HR professionals, and we asked them about their own well-being and their staff's well-being and the resources they have in place for mental health support. And we found that 1 in 2 HR professionals shared that they have some mental health resources in place, but 44% shared with us that they're not satisfied with those resources. What is your experience working with SMEs on this? What can HR professionals do to help their employees to utilize resources and also improve the resources they have?
I think there are a number of things to be looked at. Well, in the first place, in some cases, they may not have enough resources or the right kind of resources. That's one. And in some other situations, you may have sufficient resources, but people are not too careful. How to put it? They're careful not to be seen to be too enthusiastic to use them. There's a stigmatization there. Well, firstly, they've got to be themselves convinced. And that's not an easy thing, right? As I mentioned, because you really, really need to believe in it, right? So you need to become a wellness, well-being advocate, really. And to do that, you've got to be a practitioner. I'm not saying that you've got to suddenly change your lifestyle and go super organic and all that kind of stuff. I don't mean that. but you've got to believe in it, because if you don't, how are you going to get other people to believe you, right? So that's one. Then, well, because you're not the boss, you need to help your boss to, like you, believe in it. Just because he provides it doesn't mean he believes in it. And he or she may not be providing enough of it, or the right kind, right? But there are many, many kinds, right? So that's important too. Then, to convince them, not only must you yourself be enthusiastic and a believer, you must have the knowledge and understanding, because you're the professional. He looks to you, he's got to trust you to be able to do that, he or she. And therefore, you've got to upgrade yourself in this. You've got to go for training, you've got to go for, but it may not be sufficient. You may need to work with bodies like HRI, for example, so that you're part of a larger community practice, and you can tap on that. Get your boss involved in some way, attend a seminar, whatever. That's very important, but it's not enough, because the third component, or the third group, obviously, is the staff in general. They're going to be convinced. So if you just convince your boss, convince yourself, and you provide it and say, voila, magic is here, feed, and things will be better. Now, you get them involved as well, so there's ownership. So it's not just the HR professional or the boss who attends the seminars and sees all these things. They should too as well.
What changes do you hope to see in the national HR well-being sphere in the next few months and years ahead?
Let me take a step back to answer this question. Right? HR traditionally or technically is about increasing profit, or rather it support the making of profits, right? For organizations, yeah. So it's very micro. It's organization focused, and the people are literally a resource for making profits. The human capital thinking is similar, but on a broader scale, where people or workers are seen as human capital. What I believe Singapore, and actually all other nations, need is to shift more from the HC, human capital, approach to HD approach. They need to also increasingly change the mindset. See that well-being, wellness, or the intrinsic value of the human being, in short, right? You got all that in the ILO, UN sustainable, it's all there, right? Sustainable goals, it's all there. The human development, they all stated there in very concrete terms. All these are not just good to have. They are good to have in the short term, maybe, because human beings can suffer for a short while and still, keep the status quo, but not for too long. Things will give. If you're looking further, if you're being wise in saying that sustainability nationwide at the national level means that I really, really need to invest in my people, and it's not just education, the hard stuff, the skills training, all that is good, but it's the well-being as well. We need to go back to basics, and the basic is always the person. Yeah, so that's my take.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Cedric. What you shared sits very well with me, and also resonates very, very well with Intellect's mission, which is really to make mental health care radically more accessible to everyone. I think you're right. In terms of moving towards a resilient workforce here, we need to put the human needs first and put them center, not just focus on the profits. Thank you so much, Cedric, for joining me today.
The pleasure is mine. I thank you for inviting me.